I disagree, as you just said. Just as a disclaimer, I have no political aspirations in the slightest, so I'm probably going to be a little bit more real with you than some of the politicians that came on the stage today. But before that, let's start with a poll, something easy. All right, by a show of hands, who here, in the course of their public education history curriculum, has heard of the Revolutionary War era pamphlet, Common Sense by Thomas Paine? Even if you just heard of the title, if you've heard of it, raise your hand. All right, so a good number of you have. But let me follow up with another quick poll, because I don't think many would be able to truthfully raise their hand on this one, myself included. Those same people who just raised your hands, how many of your teachers actually went into depth into Common Sense, or had you actually read it? No hands at all, one hand, two hands. So, again, almost none of you. I would fall into this category as well. My teachers did not do anything about it. To say it's important, or we were simply taught the name, the author, and that it was a pamphlet, and that's it. But to say it's important is an understatement. So in proportion to the total population of the colonies at the time, it had the largest sale and circulation of any book published in American history. It's still the best-selling American title, and even now is still being printed. Not only that, but it's considered by many historians as an overwhelming catalyst that finally pushed the Continental Congress to finally draft the Declaration of Independence to form our beloved United States. Well, with all that, you may find yourself wondering why you never learned about it in history class. Well, let me show you why your government-run education didn't elaborate on Thomas Paine's bestseller. In the very beginning of the first section, titled Of the Origin and Design of Government in General, with concise remarks on the English Constitution, Thomas Paine states, some writers have so confounded society with government as to leave little or no distinction between them, whereas they are not only different, but have different origins. Society is produced by our wants, and government by our wickedness. The former promotes happiness positively by uniting our affections, the latter negatively by restraining our vices. The one encourages intercourse, the other creates distinctions. The first a patron, the last a punisher. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer or are exposed to the same miseries by a government which we might expect in a country without government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Government is like dress, is the badge of lost innocence. The palaces of kings are built on the bowers of paradise. I think you can see why this isn't exactly a big part of our modern history curriculum in our government-run education. Mr. Paine is not pulling any punches when it comes to what he believes is the true purpose of government, but he doesn't stop there. He then later states, men who look upon themselves that are born to reign and others to obey soon grow insolent. Selected from the rest of mankind, their minds are early poisoned by importance, and the world they act in differs so materially from the world at large that they have but little opportunity of knowing its true interests. And when they succeed to government, are frequently the most ignorant and unfit of any throughout the dominions. That sounds pretty familiar. Thomas Paine is absolutely bashing those who believe their divine duty is to rule over people. He's obliterating those who feel privy to become oligarchs. He's talking about, you guessed it, career politicians. Hey! So he doesn't just have a disdain for government, but those who deem themselves political leaders or rulers. Can you blame him? He wasn't the only one of the founders to express this in writing. George Mason, a native from just 2 counties over, stated in Article 4 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, he wrote, none of mankind is entitled to exclusive or separate emoluments or privileges from the community, but in consideration of public services, which not being descendable, neither ought the offices of magistrate, legislator, or judge to be hereditary. Yet we have political dynasties. We have people sitting in Congress for 20, 30, 40 years, despite an approval rating well below what any of us would find acceptable. Those people who we so disapprove of are the ones Thomas Paine was writing so harshly about. Can we truly say the government knows what we require and knows our life better than we do as to make decisions for it? Absolutely not. Do you think any politician at any level of government genuinely understands what you're going through or what the issues are near and dear to your hearts? No. When it comes down to it, despite what any government representative, politician, or institution tells you, I heed you to follow two words: question everything. While we may have been taught y equals mx plus b in school, something we were never encouraged to do was challenge the narrative and take the unmistakable truths and form our own opinion. Let's be honest. How many of us actually trust the government?
Not a single one.
The same government that in turn listens to our phone calls, reads our text messages, and doesn't trust us to be armed. These very issues are the same ones, minus the electronic part of that surveillance, that the colonials faced in the 1760s and 1770s. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe that you should at least vote in your local elections, but you must take every box that you check on the ballot with a grain of salt. Understand that despite you choosing this person with a certain letter next to their name to represent you, that you and your communities alone are responsible for your safety, security, prosperity, and life in general. These communities are the societies that Thomas Paine is writing about, that he so diligently explained why they absolutely need to be separated from the idea of government. They are not only different, but they are polar opposites. Despite you being in charge of your own life, although you wouldn't be if the government had its way, part of that responsibility is building relationships with others and that, my friends, is why we're here today. This is a place to network with people from your community and surrounding communities to create bonds, because at the end of the day, there is nothing the government fears more than free thought and unity. Free thought and unity brings a whole new realm of understanding, including the realization that the easiest way for government to rule is, again, the polar opposite, through manipulation and division. Look at our media, look at our schools, look at the messages being put out there. This person said this, so people who identify with this party should feel this way. And unfortunately, those messages are on what we call news. Hey, Mocha, calm down. It's no longer news. It's divisive propaganda. How do we combat this? Lower their viewership. Read a book, turn off the television, get out there and work together with your neighbors to create a stronger and more positive community. The community aspect is cataclysmic, not only in positive change, but defending your own life, liberty, and property. One message I continually heard at all these dozens of sanctuary county meetings I've attended over the past few months. Hold on. Mocha, can you calm down, please? What are you doing? Hey, sit. Sit down. Good girl. Thank you. All right. One message I continually heard in all the dozen or so sanctuary meetings I've attended over the past few months was one that all of us gun owners are extremely familiar with. Come and take it. Well, let's take a step back and say that they indeed show up to your door to do just that. One, are you truly proficient with the weapons that they're coming to take, or is it collecting dust in your safe? And two, do you have a community that will show up to back you up in this worst case scenario? Now, before I go any further, let me just say I am in no way advocating or calling for violence. I find violence abhorrent, but I have always been of the mindset that you should hope and pray for the best, but train and prepare for the worst. That's the key, training and preparing with your community. Most of us have heard of the 2014 Bundy Ranch standoff, but do you know what was absolutely crucial to what made regular men and women able to peacefully force the government to stand down? A community of peaceful people who have the means and equal firepower to those oppressing them. And yes, they were peaceful, because being peaceful is a choice. If they were not peaceful, shots would have been fired. You can be a peaceful community, but only if you train that the possibility of peace may go out the window. Otherwise, you and your neighbors are a harmless community, which is not a choice, it's an affliction. Don't be harmless. Get with your neighbors and learn to use those scary black rifles to their full potential. That's the part of the Second Amendment that people too often overlook. Well-regulated militia. Well-regulated in the 18th and 19th century contextually meant functioning and in proper working order. We all know that militia is made up of the people, but a functioning and in proper working order militia means you can shoot proficiently and effectively from more than just a bench rest, and you are proficient in the ability to make things happen in combat. So now knowing that, do you just have the arms to bear, or are you just as well regulated? Get out there and put rounds through those scary assault weapons with your communities. We're here today to build those communities, but we need to actually use those communities as well. You don't build a house then never move in. You move in and continue to maintain and improve it well into the future. Now, I am by no means, again, advocating to build a commune or not recognizing each other's property rights, because that's communism, and communism blows. So don't do that.
Hey!
But become a tight-knit community that can be an effective force that can do more than just give each other a passing nod at the grocery store or the gas station. And you can count on each other when the going gets rough. So question everything. Don't put your undying trust in any political figure, because they will let you down. Build and train as a community and never stop fighting for what you believe in. With that, I'll end with a final Thomas Paine quote, but this time from American Crisis No. 1 from December of 1776. I love the man that can smile in trouble, that can gather strength from distress, and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but he whose heart is firm and whose conscience approves his conduct will pursue his principles unto death. Thank you.